That I'll stake my claim on. This is just a quick visual chart as to what's going on in beef prices. That's a heck of a sharp rise. And that's probably going to continue something similar throughout 2013. So be prepared. That will suck some money out of the economy. I mean, that will spook consumers a little bit in a Farm Bill year. Now as we take a look at kind of the broader picture, the broader what's going on in agriculture as a whole, I've said it before, we've had 3 great years, well, 3 of the 5 great years in agriculture in these past few. Did anybody here happen to catch the Super Bowl? It was a big football game. It was on a few weeks ago. Anybody? Did anybody happen to catch the ad ran by Ram Trucks during the Super Bowl? Paul Harvey, so God Made a Farmer. Ram Trucks spent about $10 million on airtime for that ad during the most watched televised sporting event in history to hit one small consumer group. Dodge was aiming at 2% of the population with that ad. They were aiming at the people in this room and your customers. Dodge recognized this chart. Ram Trucks is liking this. When it comes to being a bright spot in the economy, this is why it's hard to beat agriculture. In the last 5 years, if you were a student going to college and you wanted a job after graduation, you didn't go in and study women's studies. You didn't even go into engineering. If you wanted a job after graduation, you went in to some field in agriculture. I had the chance a couple weeks ago to talk to Mike Duffy at Iowa State University, and we were talking about how are things going in the ag department. How does it look? You know, you getting decent enrollment? How are the kids doing after they get out? In 2012, Iowa State University College of Agriculture and Life Science had 100% job placement, or kids going into graduate school. That's unreal. And we're seeing that. That's just in Iowa. We're seeing it in Kansas. We're seeing it in Nebraska, Illinois, Indiana, all across the heartland. That's what we're seeing. We in agriculture have reversed that brain drain that was such a hot topic amongst those who talk about those things 5, 10 years ago. When I was in high school, that was the big thing. All these young people, they're growing up, and they're going to college, and they're going to Chicago, and they're going to New York, and they're going to Phoenix, and they're leaving Iowa. That has practically stopped. We're still seeing the transfer of people from small towns to bigger cities within the same state. But the brain drain, the risk of young people leaving rural states has stopped. We haven't turned it around. We're not growing as such, but we've stopped that drain. That bodes very, very well for agriculture in the future. Young folks look at these numbers and they like them. We like the idea that we can do what we grew up doing and make money doing it. So we're going to see a lot of talented people staying in agriculture for the next 10, 15 years, as long as those profits stay high, and they probably are going to. Farmers, in these past couple years, they have been able to deleverage. We're farming smarter, not just harder. And this comes back to, as we look at those record farm incomes, as you look at your balance sheets for your company, if you're here, you probably didn't do so badly in 2012. You probably had a pretty decent year. A lot of us in agriculture have, in the industry and in production agriculture. I know we've got to talk later today, one of the breakout sessions, about what's going on in Washington. So I'm going to let him handle the specifics of what's going on in Washington. But if you look over the last 10 years, what happens when the country at large sees an industry making a decent amount of money? What do we see? Does Washington issue a press release saying, hey, great job, agriculture, you keep it up? No. We didn't see that in banking. They cracked down. We didn't see that in oil. They've cracked down. The fear is, as we continue to do well in agriculture, the country's going to know that we're making pretty decent incomes, and then they're going to go to the grocery store and look at record meat prices, look at higher prices on cereals, and they're going to wonder, why are farmers getting rich off me? It's a very real threat. So we have to be out there informing the public constantly about what we do. This is a picture. For those of you in the back, you can't see it. We got a row of bananas here for sale. 78 cents a pound. They are marketed long yellow things. That's what this stock boy is selling, long yellow things. I guarantee you, if this guy doesn't know what a banana is, he has no idea what you're doing on your farm and what is coming into their store shelves from the heartland, from your customers' farms. He has no idea what's going on. Those are the guys that we have to reach. And now, think about everybody you know in agriculture. Think about the other folks at the table there with you. Who's a better spokesman for agriculture than those of us in the industry? We're all very smart. We all live and breathe agriculture. We feel this connection to the land and to the things we create, and we're all extremely good looking. When it comes to having a face for agriculture, it needs to be us. We need to be out there reaching people who have no idea that food doesn't just come from a grocery store. And that's the challenge, and I know I've hit on that a couple times maybe this morning. I'm probably going to hit on it a couple more, and it's going to become a bigger issue in the future. Please keep that in mind. Be out there. Invite people to come and see your operation. If you can take somebody out to one of your customers, go do it. Show them what crop nutrients are all about. Show them how you're increasing efficiency. Show them how you're applying them safely. Tell our story. It's what we need to do in agriculture. This comes back to what we're seeing around the world. We're seeing those increased farmland values. We're seeing farmland values across the country climbing. This isn't just isolated to a few corn-growing states capitalizing on ethanol. This is really across the heartland. 30% in North Dakota, 18% in Iowa, 15%. This is growth to the third quarter of 2012. 30% in Nebraska, 12% in Oklahoma, 2.5% in Texas, which has been suffering under a drought for 2 years. Farm prices are still going up. Things bode well for those of us in agriculture. The future is very bright for those of us in agriculture today. It's a great time to get into the industry. It's an even better time to already be established in the industry. And that's what we're seeing. Because of these prices, we are seeing increased consolidation. I'm sure you folks are seeing it with your customers. We've seen it throughout history, and it's accelerating. The bigger guys are the guys who are able to take advantage of these prices. They're consolidating, they're becoming more efficient, and that's going to continue. The number of people in production agriculture is probably going to continue to decline as those of us involved in agricultural support, ag technology, ag education, all the other facets of the ag industry, we're going to continue because it's going to take more of us to support one giant guy in production agriculture. And that's going to be a trend, and that's going to be a trend that's going to get reported as it continues to grow. How many people here have heard that from friends, neighbors? I heard it from a lady at church last week, that it's so sad that there are no more family farms. It's all corporate farms. Has anybody heard that? Heard that refrain? It's said all too frequently. We need to be out there explaining to people that farming is farming, and a lot of people incorporate. We've got Genuine Pearson Cattle Company incorporated for our 7 cattle. Well, we are still a family farm. So are a lot of your customers, and we have to make that toll. We just have to constantly reach out to the public, not to beat a dead horse or anything. But this comes back to, as we look at, well, what are farmers doing with this income? They're behaving very, very smartly. We are paying down debt, by and large. Farmers are deleveraging more and more and more, which is wonderful. Eventually, we are going to turn around. We are going to see prices plateau. We are going to see input costs rise up to meet it. We'll be back in the traditional ag realm of hoping to make a profit. But paying off our debt bodes well for the future. Now, farmland values, we can see they are making up an even larger share of our balance sheets. And that's just something that's going to happen when you're seeing 30% year-over-year growth in farmland values. The good news is we are paying down debt. We are down almost to an all-time record low on debt held by farmers. That's great news. We are behaving smart as an industry. Rising prices for the commodities, for farmland, it's a two-way street. We're looking at seed costs continue to rise. We're looking at inputs in general rising. Machinery costs, new and used machinery is off the charts. Heard about an auction up in northern Iowa, just north of Waterloo, where a John Deere 4440 went for $50,000. It's unbelievable. It's unreal. We've got, my wife is in the back. Heidi is in the back of the room here. Gave her a break from feeding the calves today. We've got a 1967 Minneapolis Moline G900. That's our workhorse. Eventually we'll get one with a cab, and I'm awfully excited about that. But I tell you, if I could sell that Minneapolis Moline for 25 grand, I'd be happy. In fact, if anybody's interested, find me afterwards. I'll take a check. Pretty flexible. That's what we're seeing. I mean, farmers with money, they're paying for quality, by and large. That's why nobody's going to give me 25 grand for my rusty Minneapolis Moline. Quality's not there. That 440 was owned by a John Deere mechanic. Expertly maintained, extremely well kept. We're seeing that throughout the industry. Folks with cash are willing to part with it for something that's a good value in terms of it's well kept. Now, there are still cheap things out there. You can still, your customers, when they go out into the world, if they're buying on a budget, they can find affordable machinery, affordable vehicles. They can probably find affordable inputs if that's their main concern. But most people in the ag industry understand that when you buy that budget product, whatever it might be, you are sacrificing something. We found this out the hard way just about a month ago. Growing up, we had a cow-calf operation, and we always had a half-ton truck. Never had a three-quarter-ton truck. Now, we lived about 18 miles from the sale barn, and in a half-ton truck with a 16-foot livestock trailer, it took us weeks to move our cattle in to sell them. Because we could put like 4 calves on the trailer, haul it in, the truck would be bottoming out, then we'd unload them, we'd go back home, get 4 more, and we'd do that for days and days on end. And I always wanted a three-quarter-ton truck. In my mind, when I had that three-quarter-ton, I'd made it. I was a farmer with my 7 acres. But I'd be set. So I told Heidi, I said, babe, I'm going to buy a truck. We got the farm now. I'm buying a truck. She said, we don't have any money. She handles most of that. And I said, well, we'll look around. We'll see what we can find. We're not in a rush. We'll see what we can find. So we ended up, we looked and looked and looked and looked and looked, and then right at the local Chevy dealership, boom! We found a truck. This is the good side. The back side is even worse. And you can see on here, we've got a very nice aftermarket ag hitch bumper. It's got the cushion, so when you're hauling a grain wagon, oh, it's fancy. That fell off when I pulled into the hardware store. It just dropped right off. It's bolted to the frame, and the frame is so rusty, it dropped off onto the concrete, and the poor checkout lady had to come in and help me lift it back into the truck. Your customers understand that if they're going out to buy on a budget, that's what they're going to be getting. The good stuff in agriculture costs more now than it ever has in history. So that's just something to keep in mind. When you're out there, if you got customers like me that can barely make ends meet, and they're trying to find just that little thing a little bit cheaper than maybe what they need to be, by the time we get done making this truck actually work, it's going to cost us more than a decent three-quarter-ton truck would have cost us. It's the lesson we've learned. It's the lesson a lot of people have learned in agriculture over the past 5 years. And it's an expensive lesson to learn. Yeah, she's a beaut. 4-wheel drive works, though. The AC works, so it's nicer than my other truck. Now, as we look to what's going on in America and the world, this is where things look very bright for agriculture. This is where we are going to shine in these next couple of years. We've had profitable years in the past. This is why we're going to have profitable years in the future. As I mentioned, consumer sentiment's picking up. People are feeling more confident. People are beginning to buy homes again. We've got homes that are selling at their fastest pace in about 5 years. And if we go and look at this chart, the dotted line here, this is historical lows. This is as low as we've really ever been in history. And we're all cheering the increase in single-family homes sold. We're starting to sell some homes. I know we're starting to see some construction in parts of the country. We're almost back up to the historical low. That's how bad things were these last 5 years. But the good news is, with these low interest rates and affordable prices on the homes that are out there, we're seeing younger, a lot of times first-time home buyers come back into the market. These past few years scared them. A lot of them kept renting. Now that we're seeing some firmness in the economy, they're beginning to put down roots. They're beginning to rebuild communities, and that bodes very, very, very well for the future of America. And we've got a lot of room to grow on the housing side. There's a lot of upside there as people continue to feel more confident. Things are just going to begin to snowball, and I think 2013 is really the year we're going to see that snowball accelerate. Manufacturers are feeling more confident. We've picked our orders back up. We're not near to record highs, but we're climbing. We're going in the right direction. We saw Superstorm Sandy and the fiscal cliff debacle spook a lot of people, but we've bounced right back. Things are improving in the U.S. economy, and that's going to be great. Increased consumers, increased demand, things look good around the country. Now let's take a look at the world. What's going on in the rest of the world? As we look to, there's that population chart. 7 billion to 9 billion. We've got just shy of 40 years to figure out a way to feed all these additional people. To do that, we are going to rely ever more increasingly on crop nutrients. You guys in this room, you are at the forefront at this battle on hunger. We're going to have the farmers out there planting, but just planting what we've been planting and doing what we've been doing has produced great yields. We need them to climb even more. And to do that, that's going to fall on your shoulders. Get out there. Tell them what they need to be doing. Figure out ways to get those yields up, because we are going to have the consumers. We are going to be able to have 300 bushel corn. We are going to need 300 bushel an acre corn.